It's that gap between Christmas and New Year's where we're all chilling out and taking naps, as demonstrated by the men's basketball team against Western Michigan. You're listening to Can't Read, Can't Write. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Can't Read, Can't Write, the podcast that proves Spartans can talk. I'm Mike Jones, joined as always by a man who could not be bothered to fill out anything other than the cold open, Kevin Greck.
Well, with Plum not here, I just wanted to make sure that mantle was, there was an homage to our listener guest. And I was too busy in the ultimate fan podcast move. We're recording.
Don't indulge Graham in his phrasing.
We're recording while our number one team in the country, ice hockey team, is in its championship game match against Western. 15 minutes left. MSU just scored to go up 2-1, and proving that at least they're not taking a nap in between Christmas and New Year's. Unlike, as you established, Mike Jones, the basketball team did this afternoon. A underwhelming effort. Is that the most charitable way to say it? How do you want to characterize what we watched this afternoon?
I mean this very sincerely. I love that we're at a place where we are complaining and will complain about an 18-point win.
Sure.
Because I don't know that last year's team has an 18-point win.
Yeah, I guess it's a good point, and it gives us some. I guess,
but we don't need to be healthy about this. We should complain about this. I'm not. It was uninspiring. We'll get into it here in a little bit, but of course we want to thank everyone for listening. And if we could ask a small favor, please share the pod with Spartans in your life. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_pod, on Blue Sky at SpartanPod. And if you're not already watching on YouTube, please check out the YouTube channel, Can't Read, Can't Write, at Spartan_pod, however you want to find it. Would mean a ton to us. The bigger favor is if you could please subscribe, comment, all that stuff on the channel. Would be much appreciated. If you want to give us a Christmas gift, that's the one you can give.
And Plum will personally respond to any of your comments. So if you ever needed Plum's undivided attention, and God knows this means that we'll probably comment on our own video because it's impossible to get his attention otherwise, just comment below on YouTube and
please
say whatever you want to Alex Plum. And
Plum has agreed to a week-long AMA in the comments of the YouTube video. So truly, ask him anything. All right, Greg, what do we got going on this fantastic episode of Can't Read, Can't Write?
Well, we begin behind the green wall where football always leads, and it does still this week because there's a new teenage boy in town. Then we'll talk about men's basketball, we'll talk about women's basketball, and see what happens in this GLI championship game. From there, we'll take a little stroll off Grand River, and then we will take your Twitter questions.
All right, so let's get into it. Of course, yes, as soon as, and 'tis the season, as soon as we finished up our breakdown of the many, many portal commits that Michigan State has received, we pick up another one, I think, the day after publishing, in David Santiago, who's an edge rusher, will be a redshirt sophomore next year, 6'4", 235 from Air Force. Last year in his redshirt freshman year, 5 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, 37 tackles in total, and a forced fumble. I'm a little surprised at between this and the what will be a redshirt freshman out of Wisconsin at how young they decided to go with the portal commitments from the edge position, considering how much help we needed.
How we need impact guys right now at that position. How this team went impossibly long this season without a sack. Yeah, I'm a bit surprised as well. But we were told that this is going to be a development program. We were told that we've got a development coach. And here we are bringing in redshirt sophomore from one of the service academies to shore up one of the most needed position groups on the football team.
Probably hardest to grab as well, in fairness, but it's, I guess you're what he would be in the same class as what the By Job Andrew DePape, or are they redshirt juniors at this point in time?
Doesn't matter. They're gone.
Who cares
about them? They're dead, basically. Who could ever care?
But I think, Greg, the more interesting conversation is about what didn't happen in the portal. There was not really a mass exodus of meaningful contributors from Michigan State's roster this year.
You got your Brantleys, you got your Glovers. I mean, we didn't have a wide receiver room other than Nick Marsh for a couple days there.
Were we losing a lot of sleep over it? And to your, as you pointed out, did we not potentially upgrade?
Yep. According to the On3/247 transfer rankings, both of those positions potentially an improvement from where they were before. So, yeah, it's a good point. I think that is more to do with the question that we always hear, and the question that we've asked ourselves is, where are we using this NIL money? And It seems like the coaching staff has prioritized keeping certain guys here. We've heard rumor and innuendo about Nick Marsh and what's been done to retain him and some other guys as well. So that has paid off.
I think it's been posted about, not that we traffic in a ton of message board stuff, but that that at least Marsh's negotiation was pretty drama free. And so, I think what we're watching at least invites a question about maybe there is a way to have your cake and eat it too, as it relates to the type of people you choose to do business with, right? So that you can build culture in a transactional environment. Companies try and do it all the time, right? And so, maybe this escalates over time and gets better, but seemingly not a ton of drama on this year's roster in comparison to last year, or frankly the year before that.
Still not an overwhelming number of bodies that we're bringing in relative to how small the high school recruiting class is. So I'll be interested to see how that works out. There will be, the transfer portal window is now closed
for people entering the portal, but you can still sign up through when classes start.
Correct. So that, I mean, we can keep adding bodies to the team that way. But then there will be a second transfer portal window that opens up. We'll see some more attrition. We'll see some more guys come in, and we'll see where things end up. I think we have a pretty good idea that this football program intends to have generally the same number of scholarship athletes on it next year as it did this year. Not really planning to take advantage and expand out that significantly. So we'll see how that all nets out. But right now, we've got a pretty good idea of what this team looks like for next year. And I would say it's just not even anticipating guys improving in their roles from one year to the next. 10% better than last year, something like that.
Yeah, I think what is a little interesting, and I don't know that it's a bad thing, but looking at the schedule for next year, and obviously you can't be certain about anything in college football. Look, I mean, Indiana put together a pretty decent squad this year, and Forks down, obviously, but like no one saw that game as a competitive game going into the season. Right. Or even not even call it a competitive game. No one saw that as a potential ass kicking for the Spartans going into the season. So all that's a long way of saying don't want to pretend to know what next year is going to look like. But it is interesting to me that if we are assuming that next year's schedule is easier than it's been in a while. The staff doesn't seem to be trying to catch lightning, right? Because you could see a world in which they eyeball that and you sort of chase a flash in a pan, but that doesn't seem to be the move here.
Yep. And we'll be covering it, everyone, as the off season continues on.
Yeah. But let's move to the season that's on right now, and that is Shooty Hoops. So we've got a men's game and a women's game to talk about. Michigan State defeats Western Michigan in the men's basketball 80-62 in a game that for much of it felt much closer than that. Greg, what were your sort of initial impressions from the game?
I mean, it was much closer than that. With like 10 minutes left, the difference was 4 points. I don't think we've gained a whole lot of additional knowledge about this team. I think it reinforces some things that we already know about it. One is that largely the distribution of minutes is going to be pretty even, and the distribution of minutes is going to go pretty deep. So we've kind of kept that rotation, that kind of 10-man rotation, and improved from before. Your guy in the rotation playing the fewest minutes right now is Xavier Booker and Jackson Kohler, 14 and 16 minutes each. And I think, as we've said, having that many dudes that can meaningfully contribute, I do want to talk about some of the matchups or some of the lineups and how I was not thrilled with them, particularly the starters.
Weird, this game in particular.
Yeah, I thought we had gotten past this, but having that many guys and having those guys meaningfully contribute, and they all kind of did. I know that you've got beef with Cooper right now, but Stephen Bardo's a big fan. You know, there's no one in the country does it better than Cooper. That's what I think propelled us into this substantial 22-point win, is just the relentlessness of guys that Tom Izzo can throw at these other teams. And it pays off when you play someone like Western. It lets you beat them by 22. It lets you go off on a big win. What I'm less sure of is, does it pay off against high-level talented teams like those that we will hopefully potentially see in the tournament? I'm a little bit skeptical that will be the case. I know last week you talked about expecting more than just a Sweet 16 with this team, or Sweet 16 level, trying to work towards an Elite 8, Final Four. I've seen those types of Tom Izzo teams. I'm still not convinced that this is one of them. But overall, I think this kind of reinforces what we already knew about the team, save for rebounding being a bit of a concern in this one. Did you learn anything from this, Michael Jones?
No, I think you're right that, I mean, look, this will come out 31st. So by the middle of this week, we're going to know a lot more about this team when they finally play a Big Ten opponent that's got a little bit more juice behind it. I think we're looking at 2 games in a row now where Kohler's had issues getting the ball in the basket. Just put a little pin in that one.
Keeping an eye on it, putting us all on notice.
Yeah, and there have been times that we've seen, and look, I think it's fair to accurately describe Jeremy Fears as not quite a redshirt freshman, but also he's not a sophomore. Last year was odd for him after getting shot. But you're seeing, for someone who is very clearly the point guard of this team, you are seeing some freshman-like tendencies in inconsistency. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, someone said once in the 90s, one of the voices of our generation said, that they're not a girl, not yet a woman And I think that's where Jeremy Fears is in his maturation as the point guard at Michigan State.
You're an idiot. But all right, I'll take it. Let's run with it.
I don't think he would get that reference, but I'm making it right here, right now.
You want to just drop some other sort of 90s?
No,
right here, right now. Is that a Collective Soul song?
No, it's a Britney Spears song. And what I'd rather do is talk about how I'm definitely 100% watching the final minutes of the GLI championship game while trying to talk to you about a basketball game that barely mattered. The more exciting thing is this game now that I'm not actively watching. It was a snoozer earlier today. Western, by the way, and everyone that's listening to this will already know the outcome of this game, but Western seems to be getting truly desperate. There's like bodies on the ice flying around. Like, this is a high level hockey game between number 6 and number 1, and we're guessing through it.
Did you see Zapala give an elbow drop to Garrick Norman on the sideline?
I did. That was entertaining. Also entertaining, Cohen Carr hitting another 3-point shot. Cohen Carr.
We got to keep an eye on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, he clearly knows that's not yet his game. But the fact that he's made 2 now, at some point in time, it is going to be, he's going to be like a 30% shooter, right?
Yeah.
And you would love Cohen Carr as a 30% 3-point shooter.
I mean, I would love all my guys to be 30% shooters, because right now, still in the season, they're only 28% shooters. And MSU just scored again. Now it's 3-1.
So this one's in hand.
Well, MSU had a goal earlier today that was disqualified because it was a kick, and this one is not. That's a real goal. Boom. Yeah, the MSU is going to be winning its first GLI since 2009. Very, very likely. 5 minutes to play. Anyway, yes, I would take a 30% 3-point shooter from our guy Cohen Carr, because I love it. I want him to be successful, and his success is the team's success.
Something else to chat about, because you and I were talking a bit about Jace Richardson, who, again, was fantastic.
Yep.
9 points, 5 assists, 2 turnovers, 1 block, 1 steal. Got Booker involved when he could have taken it to the rack. Like, just excellent play out of Jace.
Yep. Played 24 minutes today. Had a plus minus of +5. That is the best plus minus on the team, according to my guy, Bart Torvik. I don't know. I mean, +9 is a little bit.
Let's pull up the.
Where are you seeing it? What did Andy H say his plus minus was?
Well, I'm just going to pull it up from the app.
The sports app. The Apple Sports app. This is solid podcasting right now. We're waiting for you to bring up.
Plus 27. Carr and Richardson were both plus 27 in this game, which is consistent with, I believe, what Couch wrote in his 3 quick takes.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's why we got to bring this up. That's really good. He continues to be, I think, for my money, the best player on the team. And his usage stats, I don't know if usage is over there in your Apple Sports app, they fell back a little bit in this one. He was like the 5th or 6th highest usage player in this game. And I want him to be 1, 2, or 3. So that's a concern.
I think there's this discourse happening about minutes as it relates to Jace.
Mm-hmm.
I would be thrilled to see Jace get 30 minutes a game when Jace decides that he's going to shoot a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I think on the team, I was looking this up earlier. I think he's like 7th or 8th maybe in shots. And we know he's playing, give or take, top level minutes, right? So for his shots to be so low. And it's not, he's distributing well, but it's not like he's a pass first point guard either.
Right.
So, like, I think in the same way, remember how we were begging Tyson Walker to shoot more
in his first year? Yeah, he would kind of refuse to shoot. Yeah, he is tied with Jaden Akins in playing the most minutes, but he did only attempt 4 shots on this game and made all 4 of them. So that means, Chase, do more.
Right.
Just turn that knob up a little bit. You miss a little, bud. Miss a little. Keep making.
Yeah, because we don't want you 4 for 5. We'll take 6 for 8.
Yeah.
So anyway,
for you.
I do think there's that sort of growing discourse happening, and it look, I'm perfectly contented with the minutes distribution that we're seeing out of this team right now. Though you did want to point out some of the lineups were odd in this game, but it was. I just need some folks to be shooting a little bit more than they are. Jace,
and
talking about you.
The starters at the beginning of the second half, when Western just immediately goes on a 10-point run, and it wasn't like they were shooting lights out either. It was from laziness. It was from ineptitude. As very concerning. It feels like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth on this subject of both. We like all the guys that we have in the rotation. That is a net benefit to the team. But at the same time, there are certain lineups and there are certain dudes out there that are dogging it a little bit, and we could just use a little bit more from them.
Yeah, maybe Tom needs to do a little bit of stick with the playing time to make things move a little bit faster. Mm-hmm. Well, I have better chances of talking with my son while he's watching TV than you. All right, let's chat a little bit.
At
about
least I'm not like slack jawed, just like drool coming out one side.
Briefly, because this was on BTN Plus, and I was not able to watch the game, but it do want to mention that Michigan State went to Maryland and played, I believe, 8th ranked Maryland.
This is the women's team that you're talking about.
Yeah, the women's team, and lost 66-72. In a game that I was trying my best to follow on the Apple app, but it was certainly a highly rated opponent on the road. It was within 2 within the last couple minutes, and some sloppy turnovers, frankly, towards the end, and just some foul shots. Put a little bit of distance. All in all, though, not a bad showing for the women. I'm guessing they wish they could have that one back because I think they could have taken it. So anyway, 66-72, bummer of a loss, but your Lady Spartans are still a team on the rise, a team to watch.
Calling them the Lady Spartans, huh? Why couldn't they just be Spartans, Michael? Why couldn't they just be Spartans? That's how I view them, an ally. That's how an ally sees them. But if you'd prefer to call them the Lady Spartans, I'm sure they'd be fine with it.
Well, we can now move on into the outline because you told me specifically not to talk about women's hoops before we were recording because you said it was boring. You wanted to talk about hockey. Kevin, do you want to, for the remaining minutes, I'll just give a play-by-play?
I'll just play-by-play the final 20 seconds of the GLI championship game where MSU is still up 3-1 and Western has an empty net. So knock on wood. This looks to have been, and I didn't get a chance to watch the third period because I had to talk to some jabroni. This has been a fantastic 1 versus 6 matchup. And Western's goalie's playing out of his mind, made some huge saves in the second period. MSU had some opportunities that didn't capitalize on. And this is defeating number 6 on neutral ice without your starting goalie because of the World Juniors. So very encouraging for what this program is doing, what this team is doing as it launches into Big Ten play. And ultimately the rest of the year. So good to get the GLI monkey off the back. with 11 seconds to play. That still looks to be happening. And very encouraging for this program that even without its starting goalie, it can go on the road, neutral ice, and beat the number 6 team.
And Kevin, before we move off being behind the green wall, has your Google alert hit at any point this week?
Yes. No, it has not hit anytime this week. What? Has yours hit? Do we have updates?
I just figured this could be a reoccurring bit of, did the Google alert hit? Because
we check in on the volleyball Google alert. Yeah. No, not yet. But my Google alert did hit for officially winning the GLI. So good for the guys. Good for the guys in the hockey sweaters.
Cheers to that. The sweater gents.
My sweater gents with my Michigan State script pint glass here, supporting the ice hockey team.
Do you have one for women's basketball?
Of course. The other side is for women's basketball because it's just the Spartan helm. And
all right, moving on. You're an idiot.
I don't need it to be the ladies' Spartan helm. It can just be the Spartan helm, Michael. That's what us allies understand. All right. Speaking of allies, I'm drinking the Saugatuck Brewing Goat Oatmeal Stout. That's my homage to myself. Definitely not to Alex Plum. This is not a hate crime. Moving on. Anyway, Mama's Mercantile. Anything going on over there, Michael Jones?
We talked about it last week. You all should check out the new menu. Go on Instagram, I think, at mamas.merc, and see the new stuff. You can head to the website, mamasmerc.com. Excellent cocktails, seasonal cocktails available. If you're gonna try something on the menu that's new, I'm telling you, the Chili Verde is the thing to try. And if you're a big baby and you're like, it's too spicy. Let's say you're like Kevin Grech, right? You don't want to do that. That's fine.
What? That was apropos of nothing, but okay, sure.
Then maybe try the creamy cauliflower soup. But maybe you're still like Kevin Grech, and cauliflower soup is definitely not something that you're eating.
Okay. Just because I don't even know what cauliflower is, and continue.
But yeah, go to mamas.merc or mamasmerc.com. Check out the new menu. You can find Mama's Merc on I-94 off or on exit 153, Clear Lake Road on the Washtenaw and Jackson County lines. Mention Can't Read, Can't Write, and you get 10% off of your bill. So Mama's Merc, check it out.
Check it out. All right. Off Grand River. I don't know if you noticed this coming across your Blue Sky feed this week, Michael Jones, but an awful lot of our programs are celebrating all-time high GPAs.
Yeah. Biden inflation has hit other places.
It is. It's not just the price of eggs, ladies and gentlemen. Great inflation has come for every single one of our sports teams. It was funny when the first one came in, and I don't remember what it was, like
men's
basketball or something. Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, look at these guys. Good for them. And then the second one comes in, and your red flags start going up a little bit. No, I saw football last.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like women's hoops might have been second. And I was like, good for them. Maybe there's a new tutor over there at whatever, the Berkowitz complex or whatever it's called that's built into the side of Breslin Center. But and then the rest of them started rolling in, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's great inflation. We're in a great inflation environment.
Yep. Truly, that many programs setting records. Either they got some friendly professors. Or wow.
Or there were major like, if this is a surprise to you, the athletic department, fire all the tutors over at the Clarabelle Smith Center because they're all cheating on behalf of your student athletes right now. But as our good friends at the University of North Carolina prove to the world, none of that really matters. School truly doesn't matter. Bring it all on. NIL, these people are really not students at all. Put them in classes that aren't academic in the least bit. Who cares?
We need to have a general studies degree. Why not?
Yeah. It's all... See last week's episode about the hollowing out of everything. It applies to this a little bit as well. And to the student athletes that are working hard and are, applying themselves and are better students, I'm sure, than I ever was in my time at MSU.
Oh, for sure.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm happy for you. But it's not possible that all of these teams are just, hey, they're just happening to have the best GPAs of all time. There's got to be something systematic going on behind it.
There's something in the water. Well, speaking of the hollowing out of college athletics, we talked last week about the JUCO ruling for is it North Carolina's quarterback? I think it is North Carolina's quarterback.
Yeah, again, furthering the North Carolina on the tip of the spear for hollowing out our great institutions.
And I corrected you that the ruling was specific to that individual player, but the NCAA has issued a blanket waiver, 1 year for all JUCO players to get an additional year. What's interesting to me is that there's some stuff the NCAA has not fought in court. This is a ruling that they will be appealing, though. It's intriguing because someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe by the time it reaches the appellate court and gets ruled on, the case will be moot because that player will have played their season and there will be no longer courts require an actual controversy. And so if the player is gone, there is no controversy. So, yeah, I don't know. This is an intriguing one to me that this is the hill that the NCAA seems most interested in dying on. And probably because if you get rid of this is the tip of the spear on why is there an eligibility limit at all?
Yeah. Let's mix metaphors. This is the fifth domino that ultimately is going to fall that will remove the NCAA's ability to enforce eligibility rules at all. And then eventually these student athletes are not students at all. And then eventually it's all just semi-pro. And then eventually it all collapses in on itself and restarts again. Well, isn't it great living in interesting times, Mike Jones?
If you were pursuing a degree the entire time, like hear me out, right? Like we can lament, and that is a fair conversation. And like you talk about going semi-pro, fair conversation to be had. But if you continue to pursue degrees, and I know we know where this is going to end up being focused, and it would be football, but like, why can't you keep playing a sport?
So you're suggesting the lifetime learning model of just take a couple classes a semester until you're 42, and then
I mean, maybe there's a minimum credit requirement, right? Like,
okay,
you have to be a full-time student, so your credit load has to be a certain amount, but.
Do universities have a maximum number of credits that you can take before you have to graduate and stop taking classes? Is that there in the student handbook?
Let's add it.
Or let's remove it now preemptively if it is there so that you can have indefinite student athletes. And we could have a Javon Ringer forever. We could have a Connor Cook forever.
Look, if we're trying to make some semblance of a tie between academics and whatever it is that is generating billions of dollars, then let's at least say, okay, this is the requirement. You need to be a full-time student on a 4-year graduation plan, and if you're not going to get a degree within 4 years, you're out.
Then what's to stop the student athletes from suing the institutions instead of the NCAA? That you're having as a university, you're enforcing your own eligibility rules.
The NCAA would be saying you're not eligible in the same way that you're not eligible if you don't meet certain GPA requirements. I believe you can be academically ineligible to compete, right?
Yeah. So I guess what you're advocating for then is adjusting the eligibility requirements. So instead of it's just a blanket four to play, 5 total redshirt season, it's you have to be a full-time student, you have to be pursuing a degree, you have
and every
to,
4 years you got to bag a degree. I think the NCAA is going to lose this at some point in time. I'm not saying this is my preferred model. Like I want to be very clear, but if the NCAA wants to rest on this idea of the student athlete, because they need to ditch amateurism, that's gone. But if you
I don't think even the NCAA is making an argument for amateurism anymore. I think there is no remaining vestige of amateurism.
They continue to make amateurism claims in their court filings. But
interesting.
Either way, my point being that ditch that, move on to the actually student athletes, and make degree acquisition part of it.
So the NCAA just represents the interests of the universities. That's all it does. It's the ticket master. It gets to be the bad guy.
It's the Roger Goodell.
Blames for everything, while the artists or the universities or the NFL owners get to skate and they get to just pretend to be, oh, what can we do? Our hands are tied. It's, oh. So what do you think the universities actually want? Understanding that they're going to get sued 1,000 times. And we're expecting it for when the revenue share happens next year. There are lawyers licking their chops for what suits they're going to bring against, individual institutions or conferences or the NCAA.
Yeah, set your Google alert up for a Title IX lawsuit NCAA on July 2nd.
Yep, it's going to happen immediately. So where do you think the universities think that they can actually draw a line, and what kind of model do you think they actually would be pursuing in the long run?
Well, it feels like to me, I don't know what they're doing at this point in time. Because it's not clear, other than they want to maintain money, as much of the pot of money as possible. So the question is, does their product become more valuable with less roster turnover?
Yeah. I think long-term it does.
Because you get stars then, right? Like you get long-term stars.
Yeah.
Which is something that they don't have right now.
The drum that I keep beating is that this works because when you and I were in school, we cared enough to go stand in buildings to watch people play sports. And then that became enough of our identity that we continue to choose to tune in on television and watch ads with our eyeballs while they're taking breaks in play. That's why this entire model happens. So if they want to continue that, you need necessarily upfront people like us to be in these institutions and to imprint, have these sports teams imprint upon them. That needs to take place. Otherwise, it falls apart in a generation.
Oh, no. I'm saying, does roster turnover help?
And I'm saying roster turnover hurts.
Right.
Too much roster turnover hurts because there needs to be some camaraderie between your students and the student athletes. There needs to be the ability to relate between those two groups.
So you think if someone's there for 20 years, 12 years playing college football, do you think that 18-year-old Kevin Greck is not going to be able to relate to 28-year-old Aiden Childs?
Where are we in the Van Wilder rules? If I'm going to make dated references, I'm going to at least move them up a little bit from Britney Spears to Van Wilder. How old can you go, do you think?
And I can see getting up to 30. Well, shit, Parker Fox is 26.
Mm-hmm.
So
how much of your team, how much of the total student body, or how much of the total team can be made up with this? And then also, when does the NFL get involved? The NFL has just been benefiting from this feeder program for years. Yeah. And that's going to start to wildly constrict if these guys, even if these guys start staying a couple of years longer, that will reduce the total number of high school athletes that ultimately matriculate into college sports by a third.
Right. Well, and that's right. Like, because let's think about this. If you could have Tanner Miller back, center for Michigan State this past year, do you take him back?
Yeah, probably. Almost certainly.
And then you've not recruited a center.
Yep.
And then if you can have another year, you're probably going to take back another year.
Yeah.
You still haven't recruited a center. Mm-hmm. Like, what are we doing? And so maybe the NCAA needs to stop going to Congress and needs to start going to the NFL and have them go to Congress. Because I mean, but truly, because you're not wrong that if there isn't churn, if people aren't naturally removed from the life cycle of a football product, then you're just going to continue to develop middling football players, not pros, but
yeah. Because if you're keeping someone to be 24, 25, that person is starting. So when does the 22-year-old, when does the 19-year-old get reps either?
Right.
Like, that becomes a real problem.
So the NFL would behoove them, and because let's not pretend that the folks who own them don't have direct lines to everyone that they need direct lines to.
Yeah, let's not pretend that the owners of the NFL teams are not the owners of the NFL teams are not funding the NIL at these institutions at the same time.
No. But yeah, so it would be look, because I do think this eligibility question is one that is ultimately going to not be resolved in the NCAA's favor. There's not a compelling reason for the limitation on eligibility. Like, you cannot invent one for me that I'm going to take as genuinely related to the academic mission, which is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So educate me though on this, Michael Jones. So the argument is that these eligibility requirements they impact the ability of student athletes to make money through name, image, and likeness over the course of their career. I get that. However, can't an institution just choose? Like, why is MSU responsible for the NIL outcomes of an individual student athlete? Like, why are they responsible for that? Like, I'm an at-will employee. I can't sue my employer for terminating me because that infringed my ability to make money from them. Why
Sure.
is it not the same thing with MSU and NIL or any college institution in NIL?
Because it's not any one college institution. It's all of them. All of them have gotten together and said they've agreed. We're not going to give you essentially an employment opportunity.
So it's the antitrust element of it.
It is. I would for sure say that it is anti-competitive behavior. You're not going to win any sort of discrimination, but it is anti-free market. You know, like an individual, short of a collective bargaining agreement, is due the opportunity to earn what they're capable of earning.
Gotcha.
Let's not pretend that. And so if we all agree that, well, like truly, because why is it less insidious if we just put something that feels insidious on top of it? So like if we all just agree not to hire women, like that, we would all understandably be like, well, that's repugnant. But these athletes have a market value. Like truly there's a market, and it's not, and you can tell because the TV contracts are huge. They have value.
Yes. So if I were MSU, we weren't expecting listeners to have this conversation.
Not at all.
But now here we are. So if I were the NCAA, I would say, I'm not stopping them. I'm not stopping Joe Blow dude from playing football. I'm not stopping, Jane Doe from playing volleyball. They're welcome to go play football or volleyball in some other professional league. We're not stopping them from doing that, and they can benefit from their name, image, and likeness there. Why isn't that a convincing argument to the courts? Because then if the argument is, well, those leagues don't exist, or, well, that's contingent on them continuing to be an athlete at your university to gain NIL access, then as the NCAA, I would say, like, oh, so it sounds like it's not them, it's us that makes them so marketable. They need their relationship with us to benefit from NIL. Then they're really only getting paid for being affiliated with the NCAA.
Okay, but let's pretend FANG, the conglomerate.
Not everyone that listens to this podcast works in tech, Michael. Can you explain FANG to the listening audience?
Facebook, Apple, is it Alphabet, Netflix, and Google? But isn't Google the same as Alphabet? It doesn't matter. Who cares? So
it's an old acronym. It doesn't update for, like, you'll notice Meta's not in there. It's not FAMG. So
anyway, so the big tech companies, let's say they all agreed, look, we want to iterate, we want to fail fast, blah, 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 tech speak, right? And so they say, we're gonna have people here for 5 years and then they're out the door. And then
that's the old GE model, basically.
But the deal is you all have agreed that you can't hire the people who worked at our company. That is 1,000% illegal. You can't do that. And it's the same. You'd be like, well, you could go work at some lesser tech company.
Yeah.
Like a Salesforce. And
like a Medallia.
And but the fact of the matter is that you've engaged in anti-competitive behavior that's limited the free market and fair market value of a human of a person. So that would be my counter of sort of like a let's ration this out to its logical extension of, is this acceptable behavior? No, you have a cartel.
You've got a cartel. I was going to say you've started a cartel, basically.
Yeah. So I think this is coming for them, and again, I think to your point, the NFL, the downstream consequence for the NFL, they need to think farther ahead, and I don't know that they're doing that, but the presidents and the athletic directors and the coaches should all be screaming to every one of their contacts in the NFL to get on the horn with their lobbyists and get this fixed.
Because if the NCAA had an antitrust waiver the way that the NFL does, that all the professional leagues do, which we should probably start looking at those.
Well, they don't have they have antitrust exemptions as it relates to TV. Baseball's the only one that actually has a real antitrust exemption.
Full antitrust exception? Really?
Yeah, the other ones only have it related to TV because technically speaking, bundling your TV together is anti-competitive. But they get away with it because they have collective bargaining agreements. That's your exemption, is you engage in a
once you have the collective bargaining agreement, yeah. Which we've also talked about in the past. Okay, well, listeners, we probably should have prepared before having this conversation, but I think you pulled it off, recovering lawyer. Well done. Well done, you. 10 points to Temple University Law School. Right. 10 points.
Last thing on the Off Grand River outline here. Kevin, have you spent any time on X.com and seen the social media marketing campaign of Spartan Nation NIL?
No, I have not.
So every player.
I can tell you that as a contributor to Spartan Nation NIL, I have received no emails. So if you're not on X, you are not seeing these things. Continue.
Well, so every player has tweeted out something to the effect of "Thanks for your support, Spartan Nation," and then had a photo of themselves, and underneath it was tagged. Sort of, you can tag someone in a photo, right? Was Spartan Nation NIL. Sometimes MSU football was also tagged, but I have questions. The transfer portal window has closed, Kevin. What are we doing here?
That might be the thing that we were asking for. That might be the outreach to the potential donors.
Drop a link to the website.
Correct.
I don't know. Truly.
Correct.
Have it in drafts for all of them. Maybe Spartan Nation NIL could tweet ever. I kept seeing these and I kept liking them so that I got more of them because I wanted to see all of them. And it was the saddest display of competence because there was a modicum of competence.
There's some competence. Finally, there was some sign of life from Spartan Nation NIL. But here we are.
It must have been part of their deal to get the money. Maybe they had to tweet that out.
Wouldn't be a huge surprise, but I'm giving Spartan Nation NIL the benefit of the doubt. I'm searching. No.
Your emails.
No emails from Spartan Nation other than my confirmation that I contributed.
Not even a thank you.
Well, I mean, it is like, hey, you're in the fam now. That's it.
Great.
I mean, it is technically a thank you. It starts with the words "thank you," and it has an exclamation point.
Oh,
but no, and all the information for my Sparty NIL portal. But that's it. That's all I've received since I signed up.
You want to give out that information for your portal?
I already reset my password, Michael, because you know how valuable your Spartan Nation NIL credentials are. And it's not a security best practice to have a temporary password just sitting in your email. So I immediately updated it with my crappy passwords that I use across all my various personal accounts. Because Spartan Nation NIL does not support two-factor authentication.
All right, should we get to a preview?
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time talking about sports already, and I think we probably lost the entire listening audience. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the preview either. We are going to be playing this week Ohio State. Here comes the Big Ten season. And Ohio State, in case you have not been paying attention, got a massive win earlier this week. Win on the road, neutral site game against Kentucky, and absolutely throttled them. So they beat Kentucky by the same margin that they beat Indiana State by a week later.
The Pope?
So
they beat the Pope?
They beat the Pope. They beat him. So Rex Specs put up a fight, but that was it. So MSU goes on the road to go take on this Ohio State team. And Ohio State, in case you're wondering, is currently KenPom, and let me refresh just to make sure that I have this right.
Google time.
KenPom 28, which is 6 spots behind MSU. So pretty even matchup. Ohio State is 24 on offense and 44 on defense. And I mean, it goes without saying when you're beating Kentucky by 20 points, but they are playing well right now. Like, they are ascendant. They haven't lost since they played Auburn, which is, they got absolutely destroyed by Auburn. But when Auburn's not beating themselves, they're a pretty formidable team. And they're playing great. Bruce Thornton Jr. over there, of course, he's playing fantastic. Point guard over there, distributing the ball at a really high level, scoring the ball at a really high level. Do you want to guess what his 3-point percentage is on the season so far, Michael Joe? 49% on 50 attempts.
Shit.
It can be done. It can be done. But it's not just him. Devin Royal is also playing really well. He's one of their wings. Only a sophomore, contributing like monster minutes
MSU
right now.
Recruit going after pretty hard.
Yeah. Yep. Didn't want to bring that up because it's sensitive, but like, this is a team that is not ranked, probably doesn't need to be ranked, but like is playing well, and it's going to be hard to go to Value City Arena and beat them. So I don't know what the line is for. I don't know if it's even out. Do we know what it is?
No, Torvik will have a prediction. But if you had to if you had to pick a stadium or an arena rather that's not Penn State to go play at, that's easiest, it's Value City.
Are you just like, these multi-use arenas cannot be trusted? I don't buy into any of them. Is that what you're...
I've been there.
Oh, really?
It's very nice, and you'll be shocked to find out that Ohio State does not care about basketball. And you'll be shocked to find out that right now, Kevin, Ohio State does not care. Ohio State, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Ohio State does not know they have a basketball team right now.
Right now is a bad time to try to get interest for the Ohio State basketball team. I understand that.
Listen, listeners, if you're interested in Michigan State basketball, which I know you are because we're Spartans, and you're in the Michigan area, now is a good time to like eyeball a trip to Columbus. I bet you there's a bunch of seats available.
So the problem with that is
it's a nice stadium.
Yeah. I'm not denying. The problem with your argument is they've only lost one home game so far this year, and that is to Pittsburgh in overtime. But they've got some pretty substantial wins. They beat Texas. They beat Rutgers. They beat Valpo. Really not that impressed. The teams that have come to Value City Arena. But I mean, it's winning games in the Big Ten is hard on the road. And
yeah.
these are two pretty well matched teams. And I would call this like a 50-50 or even 60-40 in favor of Ohio State type game. But it's a winnable. It's winnable.
I'm just saying that their home environment is not the most intimidating, and that listeners, if you want a chance to tip the scales in favor of your Spartans, we could take that arena over.
All right, let's do that. Anything else?
Move on to some Twitter questions.
Let us. Where the listeners are also sleepy. It's not just the basketball team. Pretty short list this week, so stick around. First up from Mike Jones. Mike Jones, thank you. Good to hear from you. How do you guys like your hangovers? Extra watermelon-y? I mean, that's a real salt in the wound, twist of the knife question there, Mike Jones.
We texted with Mike Jones after the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were kidding, but I did not consume that much alcohol by way of like the amount of alcohol that I'm capable of drinking and being fine the next day. And I was not well all day.
Not feeling well.
Not even finishing that watermelon shot.
I was kidding. I did not have a hangover the next day, but I did get to experience handing bottle number 35 to the social media manager, and I got to see her reaction to drinking it, and it was just well, what a hateful elixir is this? Don't buy killer watermelon, listeners.
But apparently, Mike Jones reminded us that we did killer birthday cake at some point in time earlier, and apparently we all reviewed that very well. So it's not a black eye on the entirety of the brand, but do dodge the watermelon.
Treat yourself to the birthday cake. Next up from Mike Jones, new year, new you. What's your Spartan Sports resolution for 2K25?
I think we're already executing on it, which is probably not good content, but it's do not care about transfers.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing we're doing is we've leaned into the idea of demand excellence. And I think that's where this podcast is. We're a demand excellence podcast.
We are. We are not a sunshine blowing podcast. Next up from Kate Wall, since when are teams allowed to play conference foes in bowl games? See Colorado versus BYU. Is it just limited to teams that don't feel like they belong in the same conference? E.g., Michigan, Wisconsin is a no-no, but SMU Pitt would be fine. This is a very well crafted question.
Kate Wall is fantastic. Greg, you read too many in a row. This one's for you.
It's almost as if I think one of the best jobs in jobdom, not even in sports, in jobdom, is to be one of those guys that represents the Bulls and just goes and hangs out in president suites during the regular season. And it's almost like they forgot about conference realignment and just, started making arrangements. But
it's almost like they smell the downfall of the gig that they've got, and which is a real shame we have not gotten a Can't Read, Can't Write Bowl off the ground, because this is a real opportunity.
But this has actually been formalized, Kate, because of all of the conference realignment and because of the Conference of Champions dying. And make no mistake, it is dead. They did away with that rule a while ago because the Bulls want to have the biggest teams in them. The biggest teams are now only in 2.5 conferences, and you can only split those so many different ways.
Wait, what's your half conference?
ACC, I guess, would be the half conference in football.
So the Colorado BYU is a small conference.
All right. So I guess we should give the Big 12 credit. So
it's 2.5, but like there's a quarter in 2 conferences.
I was going to say maybe it's 3 conferences, but it's actually 2 in 2 halves conferences. Next up from Beth, how far do you think Sam Leavitt can take this team in the CFP? Have you watched a lot of Arizona State? Because I haven't. It's too painful.
I've not. I did see that apparently Sam Leavitt gave a presser where he said some real chip on the shoulder things about wanting to prove he was the better quarterback. than Quinn Ewers.
Mhm.
And Quinn Ewers was very graceful. I will give credit when asked about the comment. Said, "Look, they've had an incredible season. They run an incredibly fun offense. Like I've enjoyed watching their tape. I appreciate the competitive spirit. Blah 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 blah." But Sam Levitt felt like a young gun in that commentary, and love that attitude for him. I would cringe immediately because we've cringed at some things that our quarterback has said this year. If he said something like that, but I'm honestly, with it being so chalk in the first round, I'm rooting for Arizona State. Like,
Yeah.
I
I mean, again, it's painful, but yes, I will probably root for Arizona State.
Here's the thing: he probably would have left us either way, but my thought is that he had the worst of anyone on the roster last year. In that, he clearly should have been the starting quarterback.
And he was probably playing our episodes to Mel Tucker, being like, they know.
And
they
and
can't
Mel Tucker,
read or write, and they know.
And then Mel Tucker FaceTimed for a little bit. And then he presented these episodes to Harlan, and he's like, "What's a podcast?" And he said,
and Harlan was like, "I can't read or write either." So it's
very confusing. So anyway, yeah, I'm kind of pulling for Sam Levitt here. I'm pulling for, generally speaking, I'll pull for a state school also. When you're one of the state schools with another major non-state school in the state. So rooting for Arizona State here. And look, I think one win for them is a massive win for that program. Mm-hmm. Next up from Beth Amaro, imagine my shock to hear Plum talk about going to Lapeer for a family gathering. That's my hometown. Is Lapeer known for anything these days other than having the oldest courthouse in Michigan and being the birthplace of Marguerite someone, Max Crosby and Terry Nichols?
It sounds like Beth went to the notable people section in the Lapeer, Michigan Wikipedia and just grabbed a few names. This question is not for either of us.
Terry Nichols. I was like, who am I thinking of? I was thinking of Terry. Why can't I think of the actor's name from Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Oh, yeah. Not from
anyway,
Lapeer.
Terry Nichols, very different person.
Yeah. Max Crosby, peak Lapeer, though. I will say that.
Yeah, high point. Next up from Beth Amaro. Oh, I'm sorry. Next up from the
except for Beth Amaro. Beth Amaro, peak Lapeer.
Yeah,
1B.
Lapeer.
Max Crosby. I think of those two interchangeably. Go ahead.
Yeah. Next up from the Kieski. What's the favorite thing you got for Christmas?
Oh, everything was so nice. I had a very nice Christmas. And also I don't want for much. So I'm a simple man that can't read or write or want for things. I had there's not, I didn't leave anything on the table. What about you? Jonesy, is there anything that was like, oh, Blake got me, he got me macaroni art and it's the most incredible thing. I'll cherish it my entire life. I'm a great dad. Everyone validate my fatherhood.
No, but that's very funny because you should ask me the next question instead. I really, really wanted one thing for Christmas and I got it and it was great. So,
okay. What was your favorite thing you gave for Christmas from the Kieski?
So, a while back at work, we had one of these painting things, like a paint and sip, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
A little backstory.
Was this remote or was this like?
Yes,
okay.
It was remote.
All right.
So, Greg probably knows this. Were you ever at my folks' place in Arizona for some bizarre reason?
No, and that never actually worked out.
But you were in their home when they lived in Michigan, and you might recall that there were several framed instances of art from when my sister and I were children.
Mhm.
Mom loved them. So for the paint and sip, I told everyone at work, I'm giving this to my mother. and I didn't know she was going to be annoyed by it, because it's like, dude, we're past this. But on the other hand, it is legitimately artwork that her child made and thought of her. And by the way, it is my sister, much more artistically talented at a young age than I was by a fair margin. So there are more of her pictures. This is better than anything she ever did. And so I gave this to my mother. She loved it. And it was easily best thing I gave this Christmas. Because she even texted me the next day and was like, I loved it so much. And love you, Mom, if you're listening. And I'm glad you like it. But yeah, very excited about that, because now Petra needs to step up her game.
Mm-hmm.
So, next up from the Key Ski, Greg, what's the best book you've read in the last few years?
So nonfiction wise, I've started reading again The Student and the Professor. That's written by the same gentleman that wrote the Arrogance and Scheming in the Big Ten book. So putting out a shout out there, but I haven't finished it yet. If you read Arrogance and Scheming and it was difficult to get through because it was so academic, great news. The follow-up, Student and the Professor, is much more narrative driven. So give that a shot. Pick that up. But in terms of actual like fiction books that I'm happy with, I picked up what's the first Asimov book that just got changed into just got adapted into a TV show? I read that one. I had meant to do it for years. I picked it up from the library and I really liked it. And then I meant to go pick up the next one, and then I haven't yet. And then I watched the TV show and it was nothing like the book. But the book was great, which is,
I don't know.
Foundation. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it took so long. I've been meaning to read it for years. Finally did it because I wanted to do it before the TV show came out. Turns out didn't need to because they're so different. But great little book. Recommend it. It's kind of like old science fiction in many different ways, where like the tropes have been picked up and used and reused by so many other things that you've seen over the years. But it's good to see where it all came from and how he put it all together at the beginning. So I enjoyed Foundation quite a bit. Is there a book that you want to plug with this time?
No, I don't think so. Other than to say that this is on my 2025 list, but I didn't realize so many shows that I've enjoyed are based upon the written works of John Le Carre? Not Claire. Le Carre. Le Carre? It doesn't matter. So you might remember a while back, Amazon, I think in 2016, did a show called The Night Manager, which is coming back. They also did, I don't know if it was Amazon, but there was a one called The Little Drummer Girl. And then most recently on Peacock was Day of the Jackal with Eddie Redmayne.
You've just succeeded in naming 3 TV shows I've never heard of before.
Oh.
And that goes to show how fragmented our culture and media are at this point.
Night Manager and Day of the Jackal. Check out.
Keep them on the pile of TV shows that I need to watch. The massive pile back here.
Jackal, you'll finish in like 2 days. I promise. Anyway, okay. So they're all based upon this author from the 70s, and I will be checking those works out.
And to demonstrate Keith Ski that we can't read or write, Jonesy spent most of his book time talking about TV. Anyway, next up from Thomas, what's the best sporting event you've been to without a rooting interest? Detroit Bowl was phenomenal this week. Yes, it was. Did you hear about this?
No.
Overtimes, Toledo, Pitt, times. Maxim. Great question. For me, it's got to be one of the NCAA basketball regionals that I've been to. I can't remember like one particular. Oh, I have it. It's the Davidson Elite Eight game, where they were playing Kansas, and Steph Curry basically almost beat Kansas all by himself. It was a fantastic game at Ford Field, 58-57. And related to that, it reminds me that the most interesting thing about our basketball game today was finding out that the last Western ranked opponent win was against that same Davidson team, or the Davidson team the year before. So Western has a winning record against Steph Curry. But that would be it. That Davidson, the year before MSU went to the Final Four, they did a regional at Ford Field. Davidson, Kansas, fantastic game. Do you have one that stands out for you?
No, nothing's coming to mind. Truly, nothing's coming to mind. I'm sure there's a pro sports game I've been to, but I can't think of one right now. Next up from Thomas Ambiasi, how am I supposed to go back to eating other chili dogs after finally eating at Lafayette for the first time? Greg, this is definitely for you.
Well, now you got to go across the state, man. You got to go find it. Go up to Flint. Go try a Flint style coney. Go to Jackson. They claim they invented it. So try what it was there.
Thomas is, I believe, in Indiana.
So you're going to have to hit the road. You're going to have to support Michigan and its economy. But it's worthwhile. Everyone wins. You get to have more chili dogs, and Michigan, you pay presumably gas tax here while you're driving around. Next up, from Cardboard Recycling National Champion, do you think MSU will ever get to play in the Pop-Tart Bowl?
I do love that they've managed to, in 2 years, create a bowl that has warranted someone asking, will we get to? And so I think my favorite clip I've seen so far is one of the Pop-Tart mascots meeting a mother and father and their very newborn baby in a hospital.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Pop-Tart. I love that they choose one to be sacrificed and to be put through the machine and then consumed by the players. I love that part. They get weird with it. It's not some just general corporate garbage. Like, someone's having a lot of fun with the narrative of the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Yeah, there's a whole ethos. I forget which. I think it was a journalist who had like a Pop-Tart with him and was meeting the Pop-Tart mascot and asked, "Is it offensive for me to eat this in front of them?" And the handler said, "No, it is their life's dream." And then the Pop-Tart mascot shoved it into this journalist's face. Like, it is. They saw the Duke's Mayo Bowl and said, that's not nearly weird enough.
Yeah.
And I think we should sell it. Like, and we're talking about Pop-Tarts right now. Like,
yeah. As much as we're living in the darkest timeline, one of the things that we benefit from is there's just so much media and so much different brands and different groups trying to grab your attention that all the things that you ran around, like, I heard there's going to be X movie and something's going to be it. There's going to be crossover and all that stuff. And none of that existed for years. But now everything is possible. You can see a Pop-Tart Bowl where the Pop-Tarts are being sacrificed and eating themselves. And then the ghost of last year's Pop-Tart is on the Jumbotron and he looks like the post-consumption Pop-Tart from last year. It's
whoever the brand manager is,
yeah,
is not making I'm sure he's paid well, but they're not making enough money.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly not making enough money.
I'm sure just about everyone listening to this podcast has followed Chris Vanini for like years on Twitter before he went national. And I'll be honest, there have been times where I've been like, I get it, Chris. Mayo Bowl, Pop-Tarts Bowl, I get it. But he's right. And this watching the Pop-Tarts Bowl again was a reminder that he was right to talk about it all year round. Next up, Mama
Could you imagine if Penn State and Michigan State played for the Land Grant Trophy
at the Pop-Tart Bowl?
Pop-Tarts Bowl. It's a dream. It's a dream.
It is. It is. Next up from Mama Believe, for your New Year's resolution, what action or phrasing will you either give up using on the pod, or what new adage will you incorporate into the pod? Is there anything that you're looking to sunset, Mike Jones?
I don't. You know what, Mama Belief? This feels like a question with an agenda.
Yeah, you tell us what you're trying to get rid of or incorporate. I will say it doesn't bother me that we seem to be making fewer references to
Teen Boys.
We're making more of those. But deaths at Notre Dame. Like we could chill on that a little bit and then bring it back when it's most impactful. Maybe LSU does something funny, so we bring it up.
Do you think the spirit of that slain person will rise up to the heights of the scissor lift?
Okay. Moving on. Next from Mama Belief, who is your MSU most influential sporting entity of the year? Meaning, who do you think contributed most positively to the potential success / successes of the program on or off the field? I have 75 characters left to use. Yeah, these are unusually concise questions from Mama Belief. I'm wondering if she used like an AI to proofread her questions. But anyway, is there any single influential sporting entity that you want to point at that
also
success?
Entity is a weird word to use when you say who.
And that's why I think maybe this was a partially AI-driven question.
Let's see.
It's an phrasing.
Who's well, entity, by all accounts, as much as we've dogged on them, is Spartan Nation and I.
Yeah,
AKA Ishby.
Well, that's largely Greg Williams, Spartan Nation NIL. And I would know as a member of Spartan Nation NIL. Yeah. I got an email one time. There you go, Mama Believe. Next up from Spartan 1963, best Christmas cookie, frosted sugar, thumbprint. I don't even know what that is, or peanut butter blossom. That is not it. What is a thumbprint cookie?
It's one of the ones that's like a sugar cookie, and then you press your thumb in and you fill it with some jelly of some kind.
That's awful in so many different ways. One, don't put your thumb in my cookie. Don't. I know that it's getting baked afterwards, but I don't need that. Okay. I don't need to be thinking about how this is your gross thumb divot. And that like some of my cookie got stuck up under your thumbnail. No,
I'm gonna leave a bit of thumbnail on one that I make for you.
Yeah, I'm not eating that. I'm not.
So frosted cookie, frosted sugar is your answer.
But there's a caveat. Parents love to be like, kid, put the icing on this frosted sugar cookie. Ouch, it's just for you. Those cookies do not get eaten. They barely get put out. That is, especially this time of year with their grubby little hands, that cookie is cookie 0 for a massive E. coli outbreak or something like that. I'm not touching that cookie with a 10-foot pole. So none of these win. I submit to you the M&M cookie. It's a kind of sugar cookery thing. Sugar cookery. Sugar cookie. It's kind of like a sugar cookie with M&Ms in it. It cooks. No one touches it afterwards, and then you can just eat it off the top of the pile of cookies. That's the way
what makes it Christmassy?
M&Ms get sold in a green and red varietal packet.
Next up, Pepe Plum. Which of your dads is this quote unquote damn proud man? In showing a picture of someone who had a "My son is a J6 Patriot" decal on the side of their car. Adding, on January 6, 1907, Maria Montessori opened her first Casa del Bambini, or children's house, in Rome. This was the beginning of the Montessori educational method, which focuses on independent, hands-on learning for children. Now you know.
Now you know. My son is a J6 Patriot. Do you hope for Blake someday that he could be a J6 Patriot? And do you think while your mother was putting your picture up on the wall, she was like, if only he had been a J6 Patriot?
I think that is the chance that they would be maybe a little more proud of me. I think the sip and paint is falling a little bit short in the what their son is capable of. Column.
Were you actually sipping the paint as you were? It's actually a deranged picture.
That's how I got into the artistic headspace.
Yeah, it's not a drunk sip and paint. It's a huffing like sip and paint. Next,
I'm a Charlie Day.
Mm-hmm. I did earlier when you were talking about what was Night Watchman or something.
The night manager.
Night manager. I'm more of a night bitch kind of guy. Next up, from the rant of the week, ball games. Nah, just kidding. Miami and Colorado can enjoy herpectic tubes as they go home with L's. Eating herpectic tubes as they go home with L's. They couldn't even score 79 combined, and we know that 79 is the number that exudes pathetic uselessness. Yeah, Colorado losing to BYU and Miami also losing.
Shucks.
We had kind of talked in the last week about how these games are meaningless and they probably don't need to exist anymore. Is there some crow that we're due to eat on this episode, because they have been fairly entertaining?
Well, so was the Colorado BYU game entertaining because
BYU, we have to see Colorado get housed
and ESPN still somehow try and self-suck through the entire way? Like,
yeah,
I mean, because can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
I mean, how terrible ESPN has been through the entirety of this. They've somehow taken all of the fun away.
That's what ESPN is. That's what ESPN does.
I truly hope that the SEC's media rights deal comes up and Fox takes all of it. Like,
I remember being concerned that the Big Ten wouldn't be able to compete in the mind share of sports once it lost its affiliation with ESPN. And I am so glad that it actually, what has turned out is I just don't have to stomach ESPN programming anymore, whether it's their daytime talk garbage or their really heavily narrative driven approach to broadcasting games. It has been such a breath of fresh air not having to be affiliated with ESPN anymore. And it has affected my life in no meaningfully negative way that I can.
In fact, I would argue it's positively.
Yeah. Because we were going to get fragmented anyway. Some people might get in our mentions like, but what about the Peacock? Like that kind of garbage is going to happen one way or another.
And that's also the Big Ten maximizing its value.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's not as if ESPN can afford to not talk about the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So all you've done is expand your reach.
And all ESPN has done is driven away more and more people that don't have a rooting interest in the SEC or to a significantly lesser extent, the ACC. So they're circling their own drain and they're like paddling themselves down that vortex as they just hemorrhage money. So
I'm surprised the Mickey Mouse has not realized what they're doing. And because this feels like the kind of thing that Mickey would step in and be like, no, we make money here.
Big parts of Disney look at things on geological time of like, we are an institution in our IP because we control all copyright. Our IP will exist for 1,000 years. But the people that run the ESPN are like, I'd like to get my bonus, please. So let's just short-term solutions for long-term problems.
Yeah.
Next up, and finally from the Upper Deck Jerk Guy, how's Max Christie doing this year? There was some big movement this week on the Lakers roster. It did not involve Max.
Is Bronny still there?
Bro, speaking of people not making long-term decisions for the benefit of the institutions that they represent, Bronny is the cornerstone of the Lakers organization moving forward. But I think he's starting over there now with this new look Lakers team that is just not very good.
Wait, who's starting?
Max Christie, I believe.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Bronny. Next up from the Upper Deck Jerk Guy, Greg, what are the chances Michigan State wins the regular season Big Ten championship this year? Better than last year?
Yeah, substantially better than last year. We talked about how they're one of like 5 or 6 teams that can compete for it. So there you go. Something like 10 to 15%.
Would it be fair to say that it's possible that on January 3rd, when we play Ohio State at Ohio State, you'll come away with a different opinion on this question?
Yeah. Yeah. Almost like starting to play more conference games might help us, might give some clarification. And finally, what resolution will you break this year, Michael Jones? Do you want to share with the listening audience your thoughts for January?
Well, I don't make resolutions, so I can't break them.
It's that low bar, exceed it type approach.
I think resolutions are super unhealthy because you're resolving, right? So the second it goes south or sideways,
throw it out.
The whole thing is lost. And so I think it's better to set intentions for a new year. I certainly I've got some fitness things that I'm going to work on for me, and that's kind of where I'm looking at my 2025. And I want to get outside more and be more active outdoors. So those are my things.
I resolve to continue my streak as an ally and
fight the voices of hate and bigotry on the podcast.
On this podcast, yes, I do. That's my resolution and my promise to you, listeners, for 2025.
All right. Well, I'm Mike Jones. He's the worst, and we are Can't Read, Can't Write. We'll catch you next week. Go Green.
Go White.